So I was asked today, what is it? What is it take? What does it take to be a full-time farmer? Firstly, I just want to clarify to everybody that I'm not a full-time farmer. I do part-time farming with my father. We farm in the area of the region of Omaheke in Witwatersrand. So a friend of mine asked me a few minutes ago, what would it take and how would it be to be a full-time farmer? The first and most critical thing is if you're going to do full-time farming, you need to move out of the city. You need to live on the farm because you need to be close to your means of production because you need to oversee it. That is very important. It's just like a mining company. You can't own a mine in Namibia and you are located in Canada. You need to be here where the mine is. That's the first thing that you need to consider. The second thing you also need to consider is funds, money. Money is very important. Money makes the world go round in any industry. You can't decide to pack up and live or quit your job now in Windhoek and move to your farm and live there full time because you would need funds to help you establish and build this farm. If you are a new person who inherited a farm from your dad or your granddad and you have to go start from scratch, finances is important. Most farmers are able to balance this out because due to the fact that they have title deeds and they own their land, so they can take loans from banks, get loans and get other subsidiaries from banks that would assist them with their farming projects. So that is another thing. Finances is clearly important. The third thing you also need to, the second thing you also need to consider is owning the land. The land you need to own. It would be not smart of you to leave your office job, your nine till five or eight till five or seven till five job every day, which gives you a monthly paycheck, and rather go into full time farming on a piece of land that is not yours, that is owned by another individual, and you are just renting. Because the little money you're gonna make from your farming, or the money you're gonna make from your farming, is gonna go to paying off rent and paying off other expenses that come with the leasing of the piece of land that you are leasing. So it is important for you. It's imperative actually that you own the means, that you own the farm, that you own the land, the means of production you need to own. The third thing that I'd love to point out is also a workforce. No man, no great business, no great industry, and no country was built by a single man. It was always you'd have to have a team that is willing to see your idea and see your vision and want to work with you and build with you. If you can get yourself a very good workforce that is driven and that sees the idea and believes in the idea that you've put forward, you can end up being a great farmer. Um, you can end up being successful as a full-time farmer. But also the other thing that I'd love to point out is that you would have to have a clear mindset of what you want to do. Most of us get into this businesses expecting or thinking or believing that when we get into it, we're going to make millions. From what I've learned from farming, because look, I've been studying for the past 4 years now. I actually completed my studies this year, is that things come slow. It is not as fast as it is when you have your permanent job in a ministry or in a major big company or corporation. It's a little bit different because money comes slow in farming. It's when you sell cattle, that's when you make some money. When you bring some hunters to the farm, that's when you make some money. When you slaughter cattle and you sell meat, that's when you make some money. So money does come slow. It is not as readily available as needed as you might need. So another thing is, if you're considering quitting your job and going into farming full time, you might also have to consider to develop a saving mentality, having a savings account where every month when you sell an animal or when you sell a product from the farm and you make money, you deposit that into the account for rainy days. The term save for a rainy day, I think, actually started off in farming because you need to save for rainy days. And with farming, which you partake and practice in, whether it's animal husbandry or horticulture or those type of major forms of farming, you need to also understand that your biggest business in agriculture is nature. And if that year the rainfall is not that good within the region or the country you farm in, you're going to make losses. So you also need to have contingency plans for when things go bad. For example, if you are breeding cattle, and cattle is that's your major business, you're into the meat production, you need to have a contingency plan to say, if I'm going to have a drought next year, what exactly am I going to do? Number one, am I going to start now buying feeds and saving them up for the dry years, or am I going to start cutting grass, hay, and baling it and saving that? Or am I going to have a policy of once it gets dry or there's no good rain, I sell and reduce my stock numbers? That is something that one also has to really take into consideration. The other point that I'd love to touch on is, if you're going to go into full-time farming, if you're going to say that, look, I'm quitting my job, I'm done studying, I don't want to get a job, I want to go into farming, I just want to farm, is that you also need to consider something that is called, you need to diversify your farming. You can't just rely on one form of farming. If you are going to go into cattle farming, that is good, but also maybe consider doing horticulture, planting of fruits and vegetables, or maybe beekeeping, something that would also be a backup in case the meat prices are depressed and drop, because that does happen. The meat prices are never ever stable, the red meat prices. You look in other different forms of farming, because it is important that you diversify. A good example I can give is your major motor vehicle companies. Look at Toyota, for example. They make we call them bakkies in Africa. In Africa, we call them bakkies, and people call them utility vehicles. They make utility vehicles, but they have also diversified their form of the developing of type of vehicles they produce now. They are now starting to produce sedans, SUVs, hatchbacks, because they understand that in order to remain relevant in the market, you need to be able to diversify. So it's the same thing with farming. You will see that most of them, the good farmers, have diversified their farming in saying they breed cattle, for example, breed Simber cattle, Simmental, or any other breed of cattle, but also participate in game farming. They have game farms, they have wildlife on their farm where they invite people to come and hunt. That is called, they diversified their form of farming. You would see one of my favorite, who's Mr. Casper Goodzel of the Grootfontein area, of Makalane Brahman. He has diversified his farming, as he does breed cattle. He's a cattle breeder. He's a stud cattle breeder. But the one thing he does is that he also partakes in horticulture. He is a farmer who is planting crops every year. There's not a year that passes by without him planting crops, different type of crops, because he understands the basic principle of diversifying your type of farming is a key component and a key element to being successful, then rather than being one-sided. Because even nowadays, even if you look at everything that's happening, even sport, you'd find that particular football players don't just play one position now, they can play 2 or 3 different positions. So as a farmer, you should not just be able to partake in one type of farming. You need to be able to partake in 2 or 3 different type of farming. If you are good at breeding cattle and goats, you also have to try and teach yourself how to be good at maybe planting vegetables or planting fruits. Or you also might have to be able to educate yourself at how maybe to perform the type of farming of beekeeping or maybe planting timber. You need to diversify, because if you do not diversify, you are setting yourself up for failure. That's all I have to say. Thank you.